Good morning. Good morning. How is everybody doing? I'm just going to give it a second while everybody is joining me. So, as you know, I put out a post last week and I said that in order to see any of my lives, in order to see any of my speakers and their amazing messages, you had to be part of my private Facebook group. So, I'm hoping that you're here and you're watching. And if not, I'm going to send out that link for you to join my private Facebook group because there are so many changes in Sam's business group. I am putting that information in and sharing with you as we go along with the changes, little by little, what they are, giving you the link. So you definitely want to join in this private group. Now, for today, I have an amazing, amazing speaker. Her name is Julia Hickman, and she is a podcast strategist and an organic marketing mentor. She's truly amazing. She's got an amazing podcast, but she's here today because she's going to show us how we could start a profitable podcast. So I'm going to bring her right in. Hi, Julia.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you
Can
for
you
having me.
can you just
Very
tell us
excited
a
to
little bit
chat.
about you and where you're from and you know start talking about how we can make a profitable podcast because
Yeah,
everybody wants to know
that's
how to
the
make a profit.
burning question, right? It's the burning question. So I'll start a little bit about me. I was born in Paraguay in the heart of South America and moved to the US with my mom when I was in elementary school. And we came here for the American dream. We had my mom's sister who was here with her husband, and they each had their own companies. My aunt was running a house cleaning business and she wanted my mom to come help her. And so, I come from that small entrepreneur background, but I really had no idea that I was eventually going to be an entrepreneur. I really came here thinking, I'm going to improve my English because I had taken English classes as a young child. But, my mom's vision for me was, okay, you're going to go to college here. You're going to be a professional. You're going to get a great job and, just keep improving from there. And so that sort of became true until I got married, was pregnant with my first, and got to that point where I was like, okay, if I stay in this job, I'm not going to see this baby like ever. I'm basically going to put him in his crib and then that's it, and probably not even see him in the mornings. So I had to have a very serious talk with my husband about like, look, I don't know if I can leave this baby. There's got to be a different way. There's got to be a different way. Now, meanwhile, over the past, 5 years before that, even I would say, I became really like disillusioned with corporate work because I always felt like I would work really, really hard to get a promotion. It seemed like most of the time I wouldn't get it. When I did get it, then it was like, gee, like I worked so hard and now that's that. And then now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And I have a business degree. So some of the like I worked for, the departments that I was in were very male oriented. So I always felt like it was the guys getting the big breaks, and I was like, this isn't for me. But then I'm like, I don't know what to do. And fitness was always a big passion of mine, but I also knew like being a personal trainer, like it's not really the best way to make good money, right? So I was kind of stuck until I got to this point where I was like, okay, I'm going to quit my job because I want to be home with my baby at least for a little bit. Like we'll figure it out. Maybe for the first year or two, like we didn't even know what our big plan was going to be. So I quit my job, and at that point I was already a certified trainer. So I just decided to kind of increase that a little bit. Like I started taking more clients, taking more classes. And then, so fast forward, long story short, I went from doing that to then doing my own thing to then doing that online. And after doing online fitness coaching for like almost 3 years. I had my second daughter, my second kid, my daughter, and she I feel like every time you're like with my son, it was like, okay, quit your job. With my daughter, it was like, quit that business and start a new one. So yeah, every time I had a kid, it was like some big pivot.
Yeah.
So yeah, this time with her, I decided to put fitness to the side and go back to my marketing roots and help entrepreneurs launch and manage their podcasts. And at that time, I already had my own podcast, the S.A.M.s movement. And I really saw how it was such a great relationship builder, a way to organically market your business, to organically connect with other people. And I knew that that was a thing in the market that was sort of lacking. I feel like there's a lot about, doing things digitally, but like Facebook ads and, like spammier things like DMing 5,000 people every week. So I feel like with a podcast, it's a great way to really reach an audience of people who already want to know what you're talking about, and then you are like that trusted source for them because they're listening to you either weekly or bi-monthly, and you get to build that relationship with them so that when you do make an invitation for a master class or some type of launch event, they want to sign up because they're like, I want to learn more. I've already been getting so much value. Now I want to learn more. And then when you make the offer to work with you, they're like, yeah, I already trust this person, so it makes sense to work with them.
Yeah. And just before you start telling us how to start this profitable podcast, you really hit a lot of topics that a lot of women have been thinking about for years on end, but for the last 2.5 years. And now with this recession coming, they're thinking even more of what can I do to be home? I'm paying so much for daycare. I'm not seeing them. I'm not seeing my kids at all. And that's where I was. That's why I started my daycare when I was 22 years old and I was pregnant with my daughter. Um, I didn't want to leave. I was tired of leaving my son at daycare, and I wasn't going to spend almost $2,000 a month. And that was back then. That was in 2002, where it was even cheaper to put the kids in daycare. So you're really talking to a lot of women who are mentally struggling to see what they're going to do. Corporate life, and I did corporate for such a long time as well. It's just women, for whatever reason, no matter how brilliant we are, it is so hard for us to get up on top.
Yeah.
Like, it is so hard, no matter what we do. And I think that is just because, like you said, it's just men oriented.
Yeah.
It is so men focused, and it's a shame. There are companies though that are starting that are women CEOs, and from there on, there's great opportunities, but there's very few of them. And so for us that are sitting at home and we are either pregnant or we have children and we want to spend time with them and we need to find the money to come in, this is a great opportunity for them to be taking out their notebooks and pen right now and start jotting down what they could start with, because we think podcast is really overwhelming and it's truly not. And I thought about that when I started my podcast. I thought it was overwhelming, and I'm not techie at all. I don't do tech, and it wasn't techie, and it was so much fun, and I was able to say what I wanted to say and put anybody in my podcast that I wanted to put in my podcast, and it was amazing. It was true, like almost liberating. And
Yeah.
so definitely tell us, Julia, how do we start this profitable podcast? Because I know it's all ears for the ladies who are listening.
Yeah. So first, let me just backtrack a little bit because I feel like um, it's also important, as you're saying, there might be some of you ladies who are watching this who are like, I don't even know where to start with like a business that brings in some money. For me, it's look at something that you're good at, right? Like what is something that you know how to do, something that you could talk about in your sleep, And that's how you can start. It doesn't mean that that's what you're going to do forever. Like for me, I started with fitness. I thought that that's what I was going to do forever. But then, I came to a crossroads again where I was like, this isn't what I want to take to the next level. I love this, but I feel like I can serve people better by helping them with their businesses, by helping them with their bigger missions. So, uh, so creating a profitable podcast. So why do I love podcasting? First of all, it's a very up and coming marketing tool. It's not social media, yet it allows you to have that online presence. And you don't have to fight the algorithm of, Facebook and Instagram. I feel like it's always changing every week or
Yeah.
every other day. It's really hard to keep track. Not to say that you shouldn't be on social media if you have a business. But with a podcast, you really can kind of cut through that noise and work alongside. So you can have your podcast and then have your social media presence with that. And because it's such a newer tool, there's so much potential. I mean, people listen to podcasts every day. And I just read a stat the other day that 70% of listeners, I believe it's 70%, maybe it's even 80%, 70 or 80% of people, they go to a podcast because they want to learn something. So
Mhm.
that should tell you that people that are podcast listeners, they are very, um, they know what they want to know. It's not like on social media where they're just distracted and there's like a bunch of stuff coming at them and they're like they're going through the whole scroll nonsense, right? Like I want to listen to, I want to learn about, I don't know, meditation, right? So I can search meditation and I can find what podcasts are, related to that topic, and I can find what I like and, follow the ones that I want to follow. And then I'm like, I can subscribe. So I'm going to get those episodes as they come.
Mhm.
So you get a really like engaged audience. Um, and usually people don't unsubscribe unless like, you start kind of talking too much spammy stuff, or like some of the reasons people unsubscribe are like bad audio, selling too much. So really, like, there's a very high chance that you can connect with a great audience with consistent episodes that you put out there. Now, also, before you get started with a podcast, it's important to have a purpose for it, right? So there's a very different there's a very big difference between a podcast that has sponsors, that maybe has those promotions in the very beginning, sometimes in the middle, and then at the end, and then a podcast that doesn't do that, that is really focused on nurturing the listeners so that they can sell higher end programs and services to, right? So one is focused on, they just want to sell their sponsorships. One wants to nurture people so that they can sell higher end programs and services, right? So really, I help people do the latter. And positioning yourself as an expert, like, no one is born an expert, right? Like, we become experts by doing the thing, by learning more about the thing, by being in it, by like having the experience. So sometimes people tell me like, I don't know if I'm ready for a podcast because I don't feel like an expert yet, right? And I feel like, I'm like, well, this is exactly, like, do you want to be an expert? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, this is exactly why you should start a podcast, because it will allow you to become that expert.
Right.
And, you bring in guest experts that maybe know more than you, or know other things that you don't quite know, but that still kind of fit in under your umbrella. And that's how you build that confidence and that, authority level in your field, and you're able to stand out from your competition. So, yeah, it's really about just like having that awareness of like, okay, where do I want to go with this podcast? Like, probably not the sponsorship routes, right? So, okay, I want to do the latter. So, okay, I'm going to do some guest interviews. You don't have to. You could just have solo episodes. And there's a big difference between people who do just solo episodes and people who bring on guest experts. Also thinking about like how long will my episodes be? Like what what is the best time frame in which I can capture my audience's attention? Maybe it's just like 15-minute episodes. Maybe it's 45-minute episodes, right? So it's getting a feel as to like what your audience might prefer. And this is good to, you can do all this research like if you have a Facebook group, or even if you just have like a on your personal page, if you have like an engaged group of people, you can ask them like, what would you prefer? What are the topics that you want to learn more about?
Right.
Pull the audience that you already have, and that's how you know like the length of your episodes, the content that you can cover. And what I would say is to share more value than you ask for a sale or a sign up for something.
Right.
We always want to have some kind of call to action, but that call to action should be kind of smaller, right? It might be like join my Facebook group, or here's a free download that you can have that goes along with this episode. Those are some of the best things that you can have on your episodes. Don't be talking about your programs every single episode, because that will turn off your audience. So those are some of the things, some of the main things. They might seem like small things, but trust me, I see it get done wrong all the time. Especially like when people start going the sponsorship route. I'm like, no, why are you doing that if you want to have like high ticket programs? And also like taking the time to have great visual for your promotional pieces. So like the main artwork that people find when they search for your podcast. Sometimes I look at those and I'm like, gee, like I feel like my 6-year-old could have made a better, a better image on Canva or something, right? It doesn't have to be this like super fancy thing, but it should be something that positions you as someone with a great brand. And again, if we're going back to if you want to have like a high-end program or high-end service that you want to lead into, you want your podcast to speak that. Because in reality, even though a podcast is mostly free,
Mm-hmm.
it's still a product. It's still your product. So you want that product to be like very well done. You want it to be like show as much excellence as you can, because it's a little bit of a taste of what it's like to work with you.
Right. And so, because I know a lot of people think about, what if I make a mistake, or what if I'm doing this wrong? I just don't want to mess up. And people worry so much about the lighting and the mic, the audio. Um, what if they start saying like the entire
Mhm.
podcast time? So people worry about that being so perfect and doing it right that they don't do it at all.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
do it at all. And so I'm kind of trying to get people to just try it. Just like speak to someone like you who does this, who's an expert on this, who teaches people how to start and get things in, lined up, and just start. Because it
Exactly.
really isn't hard, and it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
In fact, you're going to find that that little nook that you like find in your podcast that's going to be amazing, and you're going to tell yourself like, oh my gosh, that whole time, and I could have just done a podcast a long time ago.
Exactly.
So you
So right.
definitely, yeah. And I just want to let people know, it just do it. And if it's
Yeah.
scary, do it even more, because if it's not scary, then you're not doing it right. And if it's not scary, you should be doing it.
Love that. Yeah, that's so, so true. And I would say a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't know how I would fit in a podcast. Like, I really want one, but I don't think I'm ready yet. And a lot of times these people, they already have live shows that they do. And I'm like, you can just use your live show. Like, you don't have to be creating brand new content for your podcast, because the thing is, guys, most of the time those listeners are different than the people that are already in your Facebook group, right? Like, yes, your Facebook group members might want to go and listen to your podcast too, but they need to hear your message more than once anyway. So that's one thing that I feel like helps kind of like, oh, like it's like a sigh of relief sometimes for people when I tell them that. Um, or another thing that people can do is take your, and it's kind of like recording two things, but if you really don't want to do the same exact thing, what you can do is just, you have your live stream and then take a topic or two that you covered in that live stream and do that as a podcast, right? So you're just taking a part of what you talked about and putting that on your podcast. So you're kind of
Right.
giving it a new spin. But yeah, I hear that too of like, trust me, when I started my podcast, um it was like a decision that I made in like a day. I was like, I'm doing it. If you had asked me 2 weeks before, a week before, I would have been like, what? No, like, why would I have a podcast? I'm not an expert. I'm not like this professional speaker, and I say a lot. So I
Yeah.
had the same insecurities, and I just decided, I was like, you know what? If I don't do it, I'm probably going to regret not doing it. And at the time, I had a fitness client who offered to help me. And I was like, okay, this is my opportunity, like my chance. So I think I just got to trust my intuition right now. That's telling me like, do it. It's a little bit scary and I don't feel quite ready, but I'm going to do it. And I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. And I don't do weekly episodes anymore. I did it in the beginning, but now because my business is not fitness related, but my podcast still revolves a lot around wellness for entrepreneurs and, just having that foundation so that we can have our health, so that we can grow our businesses and be happy in our lives with our families and all that. It's more of like a connection tool for me more than like a sales tool. So yeah, 2 episodes per month for me is great. That might change in the future, but for now, like, so I also, I feel like people are always like, oh, I don't have to do weekly episodes. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
as long as you have like a consistent basis, that's all you need. And then like market your episodes, because if you're doing weekly episodes but you don't have time to market them, like what's the point, right? Like you're doing all that work and then you're not even like giving it more life. So then you maybe don't need weekly episodes, right? So
I love
yeah,
that you said
and as
that.
far as like making those mistakes when you're talking, that's why there's the beauty of editing, right? And like my company, we do this for people. We edit their episodes. And I would say we don't I would never offer a client to edit all the ums out of their episodes. One, because it's just sort of impossible to do that. It would take forever. And it's like, why would you pay someone to just edit ums, right? But it's also because on your podcast, people want to hear you. They want to hear the real you. So if you
Right.
say like and and leave it, right? Like maybe take a few out if you're kind of like struggling a little bit or in the like beginning, or if you have like a long pause. There's some things that you can take out of your episodes, but for the most part, just be you. And people want that, like behind the scenes. People want the unfiltered versions of
They
us.
do. Yeah.
So yeah.
And I'm really glad that you said we don't have to do weekly podcasts, because everybody's thought process is, oh, it's got to be weekly. It's got to be, every Sunday or every Monday, and it's no. This is your baby, and you do
Yeah,
it when you want to do it. And like you said, if you're not promoting it or if you're not talking about it, there's no point of doing it weekly then. So unless you have the time where you're doing it and promoting it, twice a month is all you have to do, especially if you're adding value to in that podcast. People are going to
totally.
wait 2 weeks and listen into the next episode for sure. For sure.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't recommend going less than 2 times a month, just because then it is a long wait, and people get distracted, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel like that's just kind of like a sigh of relief to people that they don't have to do weekly. And I also want to talk about the other ways that people can use podcasts is you can use a podcast um, to house your course content, because a lot of times, um, you know, could take Kajabi for example, right? Like you sign up for a course and then you're like, oh my gosh, what's my login? I don't know. I can't log into that course. Forget it, right? So people like just, I mean, and we know that people don't follow through on courses anyway unless they have the support.
Right.
So if you put your course material on a podcast, you make it so much easier for people to just be like, oh, I have the app, I can just go and listen to Sam's content, right? So that's another idea of how a podcast can be used. It could be like a private podcast for your clients. I've seen it done in many different ways where people, and actually, I'm going to be playing with this. I'm going to be doing like a series of episodes where I walk people through, the benefits of having a podcast, what they should have in place before they get started, and then like how to put a profitable podcast out there. So these are going to be like the top questions that people ask me. So these could be like, somebody could use these as like their almost like a nurture, like a pre-call nurture sequence that they could send out to somebody. So that way when
Right.
they get on the phone with you, they already know what your programs are all about. And you just kind of have to give them the like clarity that they might need to be like, okay, I'm an yes, or I'm a no.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so let's recap only because I definitely want to go back to the skill sets because we as women, we have so many skills and we overlook what we think would be an amazing skill to teach or to talk about. And so I had one client who she thought she didn't have skills, and this woman had mad skills. And we went back to basics. We went back to like exactly what she wanted to talk about and something that she did on a daily basis that she could talk and have wonderful stories. And it was about disposable diapers. There were
Hmm.
so many people, there were shortages of diapers at one point, there were really expensive at another point, and there was no choice. There was a lot of women who were like, I need to do now reusable diapers.
Yeah.
And she showed and did she started a podcast and she started telling people where to go and buy, and if there wasn't any or they were too expensive, what fabric to get, why to get that fabric, especially for children who had eczema or had allergies, which ones to get, how to make sure that they were secured so that there was no leakage. I mean, from the detergent to use to how to like clean it, like it was a great storyline. She had great captions and stuff for like months. And she started off with like maybe, and she was so devastated. She's like, I only have 5. I'm like, it's the first month. I'm
Yeah.
like, nobody knows you didn't market it yet. By month 6, she had over 30,000 subscribers.
Wow.
And it was like
Love
just
that.
reusable diapers. Like it was
Love
how to
that.
clean them, how to contain them, how to travel with them. Um, and that's what she did. And she was wowed by that. She's like, I couldn't believe it. And I was like, yeah. And it's just something that you do on a daily basis. And as her
Yeah.
children grew out of them, then she started talking about different types of traveling. Um, like she would tell how she just carries one little bag with her in the stroller, like in the umbrella, little like you know, like you open up the umbrella and you close it. The umbrella has like that little nook. She
Yeah.
put a little foldable bag in there, and it has the necessary things, or if they have an accident while they're out. And it had a potty in it. It had a foldable potty. It had a bag, and it had an extra underwear and pants. In this, like I promise you, it was like a bag that was less than one of those bags that you put your wet bathing suit in.
Yeah.
Smaller than that. And it was
Amazing.
life changing for so many women that had to like haul 3 kids to Target to get groceries and all that done. And she showed them how to do this little bag from like she brought this stuff off the dollar store. And
Wow.
so her podcast is huge and in a short amount of time. And it was just because she talked about stuff that she had to deal with on a daily basis with her children. And she also only did a podcast and she did them weekly. At the beginning, she only did it twice a month. But then she started weekly because the kids grew up and every week was something new.
Yeah.
So she made
Yeah.
it into a thing. And then she hired somebody immediately to help her promote that podcast. And it was only her and somebody else. It was an assistant. So it really is simple. It's not as hard as people think it really is. And it could be something that is life changing for you. But think about what you're going to bring to somebody else who's listening.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of times, what comes so easy to us, we can't wrap around our heads that other people don't really know.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Julia, how do people, so let's say everybody that's listening wants to start their podcast, where can they find you? Where is their website or where can they get in contact with you so they can learn more or that you could help them build their podcast?
Yeah. So, my website is juliamhickman.com. And you can send me an email. There's an option there to send me an email, but my email is connect at juliahickman.co.com. And yeah, we can have a conversation. I do have, Sam and I talked before we did this live together, and I would love to offer anybody an option to work together in a mini intensive for a very, very low price. So my Latinas, if you guys are listening, if you're not Latina, this is a special for you. It's only $300, and I have a whole checklist for you to go through so that you do this on your own. We will have a 1 hour Zoom session together where I answer any of your questions. I'll show you the simplest way to edit your episodes so that way you feel confident. Like if you have any little mistakes that come up, you can go and edit. You can improve your sound if you have a guest speaker. And yeah, just I'll help you how to do this easily and affordably so that you can put out your own show and share your message and make some money.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Julia.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was my pleasure.
Of course. All right, you guys. So if you want to start your podcast and you definitely want the help to know exactly what to purchase and how to start, you want to definitely hit up Julia for this amazing offer that she is putting out there. So if you have any questions or you need to reach out to her and missed the website or the email, just message me at info@samanthacruz.org and I'll get you all the information and details to you. All right, you guys, have a beautiful day.